What the story, YouTube? This is Heritage, and this is my Avengers Endgame review. Yes, and I'm running late than most people. That's because I went to see it twice because I wanted to give it a second chance because I actually had issues with the first one. It's a great film, I'm not knocking it. But, I mean, there's a middle arc which involves time travel that annoyed me so much that I actually was going to call this video Avengers Endgame the best bad movie in the world. But I said, no, I'm going to give it a second chance, make sure I haven't read it wrong, and just see what the story is. And I'm glad I did, because the second time around it flowed much better, and it wasn't, the stuff that annoyed me wasn't egregious as it was the first time round, which I think might be something to do with the dailies. For those who don't know, dailies are daily views of film segments that editors do and directors do when they're actually putting the film together. And I sometimes wonder if they're doing a scene so often 8, 9, 10, 11 times before they get it right that they forget what the initial impact is like. And I think that's, sometimes what can happen with a film. You go in there and you're not quite sure if you like it, but the second time around you think, yeah, that's grand. So like I was saying in my other video, I went with my best mate and my brother, and like I said, these films there's an aspect of them which is really kind of emotional, because I've been going to these films since Iron Man 1, and my best mate that I've gone with, he's married now, he's got 2 kids, and his eldest kid now he's bringing to see these films. So we've kind of grown up with the MCU, and they do mean a lot more than just, random blockbusters. And not to give the wrong impression, when I seen it the first time, I was absolutely delighted. In fact, one of the things that really stood out to me was the judicial use of trailers. They showed you pretty much nothing in the trailers. Everything you've seen in all 3 trailers have been reduced, and pretty much in the first 10 minutes of Avengers. So I mean, you've this whole swathes of it that you're not even aware are going to happen. A case in point, like I said, there's going to be spoilers in this, so if you're one of the 6 people on the planet that hasn't seen this film yet, knock off now. All I'll say to you is it's a great film, it's worth seeing. It's a wonderful culmination of 11 years worth of cinematic storytelling. So if you went in from Iron Man 1 all the way to now, irregardless of what you may feel about where they're going to go with the MCU, this is the culmination of the storyline they've been building, and an ideal jumping off point for those who think, yeah, I've had enough. That was a great thing to see. So it's definitely worth going. I give it, say, a 9 out of 10. There are niggling things in it, that don't quite add up, but I mean, as an experience, it's definitely worth seeing. So if you're not interested in hearing spoilers, don't stay on now. That's me recommendation. Go see it. It's a quality, entertaining view. And I mean, you've seen it in the box office. It's made, last I checked, it's 2.303 billion it's made, and it's still not even its second week. It's like two days away or something like that from that. So I mean, the audiences are just flocking en masse. And like I said in my earlier video on Avengers Endgame Fever, this is looking like a 3 billion film. And I'm telling you, this is going to be record breaking. I think the Avatar's title is going to be taken down, and it's an absolute worldwide phenomenon. So definitely go check it out. So onto the spoilers now. The thing that impressed me was the tonal shift from Infinity War to Endgame. They took the first arc, there's like 3 arcs of this, and the first arc is basically dealing with the ramifications of Thanos' snap and how it affected our various heroes. You've got Captain America, who now is actually doing a role similar to Sam Wilson, as we've seen in Winter Soldier, where he's acting as a counsellor to try and help people who are dealing with the grief of the lost ones that they've loved and trying to move on with their lives. Even though, underneath it all, Cap's not moving on himself. You got Natasha, the Black Widow. She's basically running S.H.I.E.L.D., or whatever's left of the infrastructure, and organising all the groups that are left around the world to try and deal with the chaos that's being unleashed, because, half the population has disappeared, half of life has disappeared. But there's still bad guys out there, which brings us on to Hawkeye. Hawkeye's lost the plot completely. He basically now feels that good people have been snapped out of existence, and all these scumbag drug dealers and child traffickers are still knocking around, and he's taken on the running role to hunt these people down, to try and administer what he sees as his own brand of justice. And Thor, unfortunately, he's hit rock bottom. It's never explicitly said in the film, but it's pretty obvious that he blames himself for, as Thanos said, not going for the head. And because of that, holds himself personally responsible for all the life in the universe that has died. And he's basically thrown himself into a bottle of a beer keg, as opposed to a beer bottle. And is living with the remnants of the Asgardians in a small coastal town in Norway. I think it's Norway anywhere, Scandinavia somewhere. With Korg and Meek. Thor is played for laughs in this, and I know there's people who really hate how he's being portrayed. I know some people didn't like Ragnarok because it was so comedic. They actually preferred Thor being more serious. And I know a lot of people were really upset with, because if he's their favourite Avengers, he's just now basically going around as a pot-bellied version of the Big Lebowski. But Hemsworth is such a great actor that there's always an underlying pathos. You always get the feeling that there's a deep, disturbing emotional issue at this now. It's not done for cheap laughs, that he does hold himself to that regard. But that how things have panned out for the team. Tony, for instance, has actually got a good life going with Pepper. He has a child, Morgan, and you've got people like the Hulk, Bruce Banner, and the Hulk have managed to come to a term. He's become now Professor Hulk, has been dubbed in the media, and his life's going well. So I mean, even though such a horrible thing has happened, not everybody's suffering, and you see levels of guilt from them in relation to what they seem to have over everyone else. Personally, I love this because it lent a degree of gravity to the events that happened in Infinity War. That you don't want to think that they just brush over this. I would have liked to have seen perhaps more examples of when it happened. Like at the very beginning where Hawkeye was fantastic. So we would have liked to have seen stuff like that maybe in cities for other people. But I mean, it was effective, and what it needed to do was to show you the shock and the horror of the event happening to just the ordinary man. But this is the part of the film which is the slowest, and I can understand how some people don't quite like it, but I think it needed it for the gravity of the situation and to show just how desperate our characters were. The second part is the time heist. This is when Ant-Man comes back due to basically a rat running across a computer panel. A lot of people have been slagging that off, but if you do think what Doctor Strange said, he did say like 1 in 14 million, so look, that is a statistically likely thing to happen, and what needed to happen. He comes back and reveals that, well, it's been 5 years for everyone else, that he's only been in the quantum realm for 5 hours. And he reasons that maybe there's some way they can use the quantum realm to go back in time and engage in what he calls a time heist. This is the aspect that bothered me earlier, that nearly made me label it the best bad film in the world, because as a device to go back, it's basically a tour de force of all the best moments in the Marvel Universe. So the various team members split up into 3 groups so they can go back to see the beginnings of Guardians of the Galaxy, for instance. I believe Nebula and War Machine do that. To see the events after the Battle of New York in the first Avengers film, where we get to see wonderful callbacks to things like, for instance, they needed to get the scepter, and the scepter was being taken away by Jasper Sitwell, and Cap, our Cap, who had gone back in time, in inverted commas, goes into that elevator to try and get it off them. And you're sitting there thinking, this is going to be a reenactment of what happened in Winter Soldier, isn't it? It's going to be a big fight here. It's not. What they do is they actually retcon one of the worst decisions in Marvel Comics history, is when they turn Captain America into a Hydra agent. This really annoyed an awful lot of the MCU fans back around 2015, 2016, and lost an awful lot of readers. And in a genius stroke here, the Russo brothers and the writers, they had Cap, instead of having a fight in that elevator with people that we all now know, thanks to the events of Winter Soldier, are Hydra agents, he just kneels in and says, I need to take this now. They said, oh, we can't. It was other orders have come in, so it's all right. And then he just leans into Jasper Sitwell and goes, Hail Hydra. He gets the case, he walks out, and he's got this great grin on his face as he realises he's just defeated these guys without using a single fist look. So as a device to be able to go back and do these things, it's wonderful. But their version of time travel is totally different to anyone you've seen in relation to other movies in the past. In fact, the only thing it actually reminds me of is I'm a Transformers fan, and I remember back in Transformers UK they did a story called Target 2006. And Target 2006 involved Galvatron from the future coming to the past to build a weapon that was going to destroy Unicron in the future that would see him be released from slavery. And it was basically an excuse to get him, to show him off as a badass as a character and trash the entire Autobot army. So in the end, the Autobots, in order to get rid of him, to defeat him, what they have to do is trick him into killing Starscream. And Starscream is responsible for Megatron becoming Galvatron. So this ends the conflict by him reasoning that this is not his past, but another parallel world. And as such, anything he does here won't affect his future, so there's no point being there. So he gathers up his troops that he brought with him, Cyclones and Scourge, and he leaves. This is pretty much what's happening in Avengers. Avengers timeline, despite the fact that it does seem to contradict other films, is basically saying that you can't change the past. If you go to the past, in inverted commas, it's actually just another parallel world. So you could shoot yourself in the past. You're not going to die. You're not going to do a Marty McFly, which actually really results in Ant-Man having a line of, so Back to the Future's bullshit, and along that lines. And I'm so used to that type of time travel, the Terminator, the Back to the Future one, that I was sitting there thinking, how is this actually working? How can you actually do these things? And at first I thought this was just a major flaw, but more and more I've actually heard that I believe there's going to be a Netflix show, not 100% on this, but they're going to be doing one called What If? And What If was a comic book from Marvel over the years, which basically postulated stories of if little changes had happened. So what if Tony Stark had given his technology to the world, for instance, instead of keeping it for the Iron Man armor? What if Captain America had stayed in the ice or didn't go in the ice in the first place? What kind of stories could you tell there? What if somebody else, like Rick Jones, became the Hulk instead of Bruce Banner? Stuff like that. And I think they might be laying the groundwork for that series in this film, because as things plan out, it does seem to have an effect on the Marvel Universe. So like I said, seeing this film the second time around, that clarified a lot of things. When I said, yeah, that they're not actually breaking the rule rules. There's still one or two things that don't quite add up. But as things stand, they're really not going back in time to change anything. They're going back in time to pilfer the stones, to basically steal them, bring them back to their own world, use them to snap everybody back into reality, and then basically undo what Thanos has done then, not before he's done it, or not to stop him doing it. But like I said, the joy of this segment is just the character interactions you get, where we get to see Michael Douglas looking very young in the 1970s, thanks to that de-aging technology they have. We get to see Tony Stark talk to his father and just how nervous he was of becoming a father, you know, and from his perspective himself now having a 5-year-old child. We get to see Captain America glimpse Peggy from afar, and it just brings back to all these touchstones, emotional moments for the characters. And like I said, thanks to the trailers, you see none of this coming. You know, like it was all kept completely out. And all of this basically culminates in the Hulk bringing back everybody. But this results in Thanos in the past, 9 years in the past, I believe, discovering what's going on. The same people are actually coming back in time. And he ends up coming to our present and basically launches a broadside against Avengers facility, leveling the place. Which brings us into the third arc, which is the final showdown between Thanos from the past, his entire army, and all his resources, versus Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor. That's what it looks like at one stage. And there's actually a beautiful scene where Captain America is left, he's standing on a piece of rubble or something, silhouetted against the golden, background, and you got the entire army of Thanos up against him, and he's bet the living daylights out of Thor, he's bet the living daylights out of Iron Man, and it's just Cap that's left. And they're supposed to put forward this feeling of, hopelessness, but Cap, being Cap, just pulls on the shield, goes to fight him, even though he knows he doesn't have a chance. And this is when they do another beautiful line where you basically hear Sam Wilson crackling across the intercom, and it just says, Cap, like that. And Sam, you can see Cap going, what's going on? And then he just goes, on your left. An absolutely beautiful callback to Winter Soldier. And we see Doctor Strange opening portal after portal after portal and bringing all the returned people from Wakanda, all the returned people from Asgard. Basically, everyone who's ever been the MCU ever is pretty much brought forward into this battle. And what unfolds is about an hour of the most badass, epic conflict. And again, going back to what I was saying about the trailers, any ordinary film, that will be in there. You would have seen at least one shot of Giant Man punch a Leviathan, which I still think is one of the best things that that Ant-Man has ever done. It just looks fantastic. And the whole thing culminates in some of the best superhero action that I've ever seen, and that's ever been committed to film. So this is what you're here for, and this goes on just long enough. It is great. And like I said, in the first time around, I did have a bit of problem with the kind of female empowerment stuff they did. Like, they've a really cringe-inducing, eye-rolling moment where all the female characters completely unorganically all line up behind Captain Marvel after she's come in to take on Thanos, or help them get the glove to the time machine, which is what they're supposed to do. But second time round didn't seem as bad. So like I said, another example of the dailies that might have looked less intrusive the third or fourth time that the Russo's brothers were putting it together than what it seemed the first time you see it. And apparently a lot of people loved it, think it was great, but I know in my cinema a lot of people are just like, oh god, but it still doesn't take away from one of the best superhero battles ever. And like I said, some of the characters that were killed in Infinity War are back because they're coming from an alternate reality, so Ebony Maw, the Obsidian Guard, they're all there. You know, like Nebula is actually fighting Nebula. She kills herself, you know, proving that the grandfather paradox doesn't work in their version of time travel. Gamora is back, and it's actually nice to see the reunion between Gamora and Star-Lord. There was a lot of people worried that Captain Marvel would be the one to take down Thanos. It doesn't happen. Spoilers, everybody knows it's happened. There's actual the trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home actually even references this, that the person to kill Thanos is an Infinity Gauntlet powered Iron Man who dies from the result. So that all basically ends the battle with Thanos. All his troops are wiped out. We have a scene at the end where basically they try to tie up all the loops. Captain America is tasked with returning the Infinity Stone to their moment in time. And then he's including as well Mjolnir, which actually Thor took from his trip to try and get the ether. So, I mean, like, even though we've all seen Mjolnir get destroyed in Ragnarok, it's back in this film. And there is some badass moments with that. I'm not going to talk about it because that was one of the things that got ruined for me and I didn't want it. You know, like, but Cap goes back and he returns everything to the place so it doesn't screw up the time stream. He's supposed to come back 5 seconds after he's left, you know, which is considered to be whatever amount of time he needed in the past himself, but he doesn't. And this now results in this scene where Sam Wilson ends up talking with an elderly Steve Rogers, who has basically gone back in time and had the life that Tony was always telling him to get, you know, like with Peggy Carter. And that's the way the film ends. And it's lovely. And it really neatly ties up the character arcs of all the characters that we've seen. Like, if you see Tony, you know, effectively laying down his life from the selfish, you know, billionaire he was to begin with. He's come to a full heroic arc. And likewise with Cap. Cap was the guy who laid down his life to save, you know, the entire world from the Red Skull. And now he's actually got to go back, marry the woman of his dreams and have the life he's always wanted. So there's a wonderful tie up there. That is one of the things that kind of bothered me though, because according to their own rules of time travel, he shouldn't have been able to do that, because he should have gone to a different reality where Peggy was, you know, like, and I mean, I did hear people say, well, maybe that's actually what's happened, because they end that scene by old Cap gifting Sam Wilson the shield, effectively making him the new Captain America. And the shield's perfect. And we just seen from the battle that happened previously that it got torn in half. So maybe you could say in that What If show that's going to come out, maybe Cap in the 1940s ends up finding himself frozen in the ice, takes the shield, has some adventures with Peggy all the way through the 50s and 60s before getting to the stage where he gives that shield to, you know, or maybe when Peggy dies, he uses technology that he used to go back in time to come back to our reality with that shield, which he gives to Sam. That's basically the only out I can think of in relation to it. But it is one of the examples where it doesn't seem to add up with what they're saying. Likewise with Spider-Man. Spider-Man is back in school. But this is 5 years later, and it looked like his entire class got dusted because nobody's aged. You know, like, so maybe they're going to address that in Spider-Man Homecoming. Maybe we will find out that certain other people didn't get dusted and they graduated and left his school. But it seems to be most of his class from his trailer still alive, so it's kind of coincidental. All in all, though, they tie up everything perfectly. It's an enormously entertaining film. Spectacular to see. I mean, the battles are amazing. The only drawbacks, I would say, the only bad sides I would say to it is that it's 3 hours long and it is a bum number. You know, like, I've been to the Michael Bay Transformers film. They're approaching the same length of time and they're not half as good as this film. But twice now that I've seen this film, you know, the last 20 minutes I've been getting antsy. My arse was fucking falling asleep. You know, like, even though I didn't want to leave, I never got up to go to the toilet or anything for the whole 3 hours. It's immensely enjoying. It is a film where you will feel it weigh on you towards the last 20 minutes. That's the only real downside. Along as well, like I was saying, with some of the more, you know, political stuff that they're introducing. Like Fat Thor, for instance, is done very well by Hemsworth. And like I said, it's emblematic of somebody who's going through enormous post-traumatic stress. But it's also a fat superhero. And there's an awful lot of people crying about a fat superhero for some reason. I don't know why they want to go down that route, but that seems to be what they're doing. Like I said, the female empowerment movement with all the girls getting together. You know, that all seems to be heading towards the kind of progressive politics type stuff that is alienating a lot of people. So for myself, I'm not sure if I'm going to stay with the MCU after this. I'll go see the Black Widow film because I think she deserves it. I'll go see the Doctor Strange one because I think that would be great. But I can't see myself starting to buy into the next generation that they seem to be. If you're going down like the comics, this is what bothers me. As somebody who's read the comics, I know where they went. I know the complete trash where they've become, where, you know, the center point of some comic book stories is people sitting around a table eating fucking ice cream. I mean, we don't want that in Marvel films. So, for me personally, I think it's going to be a jumping off point. And I'm perfectly happy. Like, I'm perfectly happy to jump off at this point because I think it's been an amazing ride. I think it's done incredible things in relation to basically turning movies into comic books. People were going every movie in the same way people would collect every issue of a book in order to see how this story would end. And this is the organic end to that film. So I can perfectly leave this now, walk away happy, and leave the future of the MCU to whatever these guys want to do. So that's my Avengers Endgame review. It does meet the hype. It is fantastic. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of heart in it. There's a lot of emotion. It tackles subjects seriously that you wouldn't expect. There's sacrifices in it. Characters that, you know, lose their life not to return. And yeah, it's really good. So definitely you can understand why, like I said last time I was saying, it's 2.303 billion and it's not even reached its second week yet. It's going to be a 3 billion film. You can see it. And yeah, that's what it is. So 9 out of 10 from me. Definitely worth seeing. Definitely worth the hype and the wait. And if you can actually see Infinity War and Endgame back to back, it'll be a long film, but I think it'd be pretty cool. So there you go. That's my review. If you like what I've done here, so subscribe and send a comment down what you think about maybe some of the resolutions to some of the subplots they did in relation to time travel and all this sort of stuff, and how you think they're going to sort it out. And just like and subscribe. So take care.